David, you were covering this as well with us. What is the likelihood that all of these countries, these hundreds of countries, are going to come to the White House and we're going to have this sorted out? David Gura.
The president thinks of himself as a deal maker, but he likes a quick deal. And you're getting at something that's really crucial here. This takes a long time. And if you do it the right way, you're haggling over a lot of nuance in a trade agreement. That's what happened with the USMCA, which we should all point out is something that he oversaw and brokered himself and took a lot of credit for the larger part of his first term. The way that all of this was pitched at the beginning of this term was there was going to be a very thoughtful process that went into looking at reciprocity among the countries. That didn't happen. We saw that in stark relief with that formula that was presented on the Rose Garden lawn.
The one that might have come from ChatGPT.
Correct. Laundered in some way and involved a lot of great characters. But look, it's going to take a long while. And I think that even if you look back at the Smoot-Hawley legislation from 1930, there was like a year and a half of run-up for that deal as well. And the global landscape for trade was radically different and much smaller, reduced than it is today. So they have their hands full. We see this, if we're to believe them, phones ringing off the hook, people are lining up to come in. I'm skeptical that they could reach resolutions pretty quick.
Jillian, what I am having a hard time getting my head around, I mean, in some ways, no. Everyone wants to go back to a simpler time. I yearn for the 90s. I yearn for the 90s. I don't want a phone. Yeah. I want my little yellow pager. I want to talk to my friends in person. I yearn for that. Donald Trump is yearning for the Gilded Age. Mm-hmm. He's yearning from, 1890 to 1930.
Yeah.
The world is not the way it used to be. You can't unwind things. You can't turn back the clock. Is anybody telling him this? I don't understand how the president of the United States can say, we're just going to rip all this stuff up. We're going to end globalization. We're going to make it all better. It's going to be fine. Just trust me.
Well, I think what's very interesting is that Stephen Moran, who's the chair of the Council of Economic Advisers, gave a speech yesterday which was a very thoughtful, extremely interesting speech. And it's really the first time he's spoken in public for a long time, where he pointed out that actually the economy is composed of manufacturing and services and digital tech. And he stressed that digital tech and services matter. Now, what's striking is that Donald Trump acts as if the only thing that matters is manufacturing.
We were talking about this the other day.
And he wants to get back to really the 1950s, never mind the 1850s, where it's all about auto factories, it's all about metal bashing, kind of his image of kind of the old-fashioned American town with lots of workers, in a strong community. So that's his image. And even Stephen Moran, who says, of course, that he recognizes that there needs to be more manufacturing in the U.S., the COVID pandemic showed all the vulnerabilities in the supply chain which need to be fixed. I think very few people would disagree with that, by the way. But the image that President Trump has, it's so at odds with where the economy is today. It's very interesting to know if there is anyone around him who's saying that forcefully, because I doubt that Steve Moran is saying that too forcefully.
Howard Lutnick was also talking about how all the little screws are screwed in China, and why can't we do that here?
But what's interesting about that is that apart from the fact that Howard Lutnick's comments about getting American workers to screw in the screws into iPhones sparked a whole wave of memes right now on the internet laughing about that, Howard Lutnick also acknowledged that actually most of this would be done by robots and digitization. And that
so how many jobs could it possibly create?
Well, exactly. You can see a path to America bringing high-tech manufacturing into America. You could see a path towards industrialization of some sort. But the problem is it may not create that many jobs, or rather, it may not create jobs for the people who are actually supporting Donald Trump today, because blue-collar workers, as we know, are not that easy to retrain.
Let me play Howard Bessent, Scott Bessent, excuse me, talking about what's going to happen tonight. Let's listen.
My advice on April 2nd to our trading partners was not to panic, don't escalate, and then we will see where President Trump is after a period of days or weeks. I think you are going to see some very large countries with large trade deficits come forward very quickly. I think we can, if they come to the table with solid proposals, I think we can end up with some good deals.
The messaging is changing. They're really trying to focus in on negotiations. Politico was reporting today that Bessent went down to Mar-a-Lago to talk to Donald Trump to say, you don't have to move anything, but you do have to change the way you're talking about it. Yesterday, when Donald Trump mentioned negotiations, although he muddied it up by saying there could be permanent deals as well. No movement. The market's improved slightly.
This was a quick trip that Scott Bessent took to Florida because he was on Meet the Press on Sunday morning, then flew down to West Palm Beach and came back with the president. Yes, the way that they're talking about this has changed. The openness to deals seems to be greater than it was before. But you look at what they've said about China and what China said in reply, and Von Hilliard a moment ago talking about kind of the steel spine of this U.S. president. China has a steel spine of its own, and they're going to push back on this. And so when you look at the market today, it was doing pretty well for most of the day until we got news that the U.S. does plan to go through this 104% tariff on China, which is extreme to say the least. So you look at what China can do to respond to that. We've seen its currency weaken extremely here in the last few days. It's likely to continue to let that happen to try to make it have a more advantageous position. It needs market access, but it has a lot of cards here. And we don't see China kind of clamoring to get to the table. Not that maybe they could at this point in time. But the way that the Chinese system operates is much radically different than ours is. They don't care much about central bank independence, for one. So they're in a wholly different position here than the U.S. as they go into this period.
They also have a lot of leverage against us. Donald Trump wants fentanyl to stop coming into the U.S. Donald Trump doesn't want to be the guy to end TikTok in this country. They've got cards to play here.
They absolutely have cards to play. And actually, I don't think fentanyl or TikTok are necessarily the main ones. The key question everyone should be asking is, firstly, are we going to see this a trade war turn into a currency war? Because, as David just said, one of the really striking things that happened overnight was that China quite deliberately let its currency weaken below a key level. And that's going to really upset people in the White House who've been arguing for years that the Chinese currency is too weak relative to the American dollar in a way that boosts Chinese exports at the expense of America. So China's already made one move to flex on that. The really interesting question to watch is whether it's going to start flexing in the treasuries market as well, because if it starts signaling that it's not going to buy U.S. treasuries for a while or just scale down its purchases, that could create a lot of jitters in the financial markets as well. So I don't think you can lose sight of the fact that for all of these 70 countries that Treasury Secretary Bessent says have been calling up trying to cut deals, the one that is most important in the White House's mind by far is China. And China, of course, is the one that is not showing any desire to start calling up the White House whatsoever.
So when you look at the Dow right now, which is up about 300, I'm sorry, down 300 points. Sorry.
It's all the same.
I can't see that far away. My eyes are getting old.
Yes.
It was up earlier today. Do you think that this is still a very volatile moment, or do we seem to be coming out of it? What's the assessment?
I would say the very fact that we're confused about whether something's gone up or down shows that we're living in crazy town right now, and the markets are swinging wildly. There's extreme volatility. The VIX, which is one of the measures of volatility, sometimes called the fear gauge, has been spiking up dramatically, and people just do not know which way to trade right now. And the key thing to watch again is not just how equity prices are swinging up and down so wildly, it's the 10-year Treasury yield as well. Because in many ways, if that becomes even more volatile or starts shooting up, that will pose serious risks and threats to the White House.
Let me play a little bit of sound from people in Florida reacting to what's been happening with the markets.
It definitely makes us think twice before we buy something. We have to be a lot more careful with our options and how we buy food.
I go to the Goodwill. I go with the hand-me-down clothes. Actually, what I have on is hand-me-down. Everything goes up. So now you have less money to buy out there for the food, especially when it comes to kids.
David, I'll go back to the original messaging, David Drucker, for you on this. And Donald Trump promised to lower prices on day one. And that has not happened. The exact opposite. Prices are going up. People's retirement accounts are going down. And there's intense worry among consumers that this is not going to get better.
Yeah, I think the danger for him politically is not even so much in the short to medium term market volatility and concern with retirement accounts, although that is a potential political danger, but that so many voters put their faith in him to fix the economy. They put aside whatever concerns they might have had about him personality-wise, the way he, certain things he did in his first term and in between, but they said to themselves, here's a guy that presided over a great economy. He's a businessman. They accepted COVID and just kind of said that was a weird thing and not anybody's fault. And so they voted for him in large part to cure inflation. And he's doing something that they may decide has nothing to do with that. Now, the Trump administration likes to tie it all together. and say that this is a part of a longer term, more stable fix for things like that include inflation. But it's similar to me to the beginning of the Obama administration in the first term back in 2009. Voters put their faith in Obama as somebody who could get the country out of the Great Recession. His first high-profile, real big initiative after fiscal stimulus was healthcare reform. And a lot of voters said, this isn't something we actually voted for you to do, even though it's something that may need to get done. And that skepticism lasted for a decade and cost Democrats hundreds and hundreds of seats. The other thing here, I think it's important to point out here, Katie, is we don't actually know what the administration wants to do. 1 minute they're talking about incentivizing reshoring and manufacturing in the United States, which would suggest that tariffs need to stay. The next minute they're talking about deals. And of course, if you do a deal, then other companies, foreign countries, domestic companies don't have to reshore. They don't have to bring manufacturing here because now we have a deal in place. And so I think part of this problem is the uncertainty that for a couple days, they'll talk about the tariffs as a tool to totally overhaul the economy and reindustrialize. Whether or not it can work's a different story. The next day, they're talking about deals and free trade agreements. And so nobody really knows what to expect.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add to that. It's hard to follow exactly what the goal is here because they're all over the place on it. They talk about needing to lower the debt. We just heard that a moment ago. They talk about, wanting to get rid of the IRS and all this revenue is going to mean we're not going to have an income tax. They talk about inflation, as you were mentioning, not to mention the negotiation or the not negotiation, the manufacturing. It's all over the map, and that is creating uncertainty. And if there's anything I've learned over the past few weeks is that markets hate uncertainty.
Very good.
David Gura, I'm getting my economics lesson. Jillian Tett, thank you very much.
And so do voters.